And there we go. Anne, how are you? It's good to see you again.
It's good to see you again too. Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. We're squeezing another show in between the end of the festival in Oakland, the first NOIR City Festival of 2024, and the second one in Seattle, which I guess is starting tomorrow,
Yeah,
the day after we record this. And in between, I've been to New York for 5 or 6 days. So it's been busy. It's been busy. I had a secret mission in New York. I was recording something um, that will be appearing at a later date on the Criterion channel.
very cool.
So, but I'm not gonna talk about it. But it was it was pretty fun. It's obviously noir related, and it'll be something that people can see. I honestly don't know when it's scheduled, but this was step one, was recording a big intro piece that that took the it was one take, but it was like the entire afternoon. So they have a lot of material to work with. Anyway, that's that. So what did you think of the festival in Oakland, Anne? What was your favorite or favorites from the festival?
Well, Strong Room was probably my favorite, actually. I really, really liked Strong Room a lot. And I guess I had texted you this, but I was watching it and the head bank robber, and I'm going, I know that face, I know that face. And I was like, oh, he's one of the number twos from The Prisoner. And then I started looking at the bank manager and I was like, he's one of the number twos from The Prisoner as well. So I thought that was like
Amazing.
very strange
I
coincidence.
guess that's Darren Nisbet, and I'm forgetting the other actor's name now. Gordon something. Uh, yeah, that tickles me no end. That Strong Room was your fave. I mean, it's terrific. It's a great movie, and it's so fun to introduce that to people who haven't heard of it or seen it. There's another really good film by the same team called The Man in the Back Seat that makes a great double bill, but that wasn't really the way we were playing it at this festival. I didn't want to put two. I wanted two similar films back to back, but in different languages. That was the whole thing.
Yeah,
So
and
I'm very curious. We're trying.
I was gonna say I
Go
also
ahead.
really liked Cairo Station. Like that was fantastic.
Yeah, that one I think we'll get a lot of plays out of that during the course of the year. It was fun because it's such a strange movie and so unexpected um, that to play it with Union Station, which is such a Hollywood production, and then see very much seat of the pants filmmaking in Egypt with Cairo Station, but a really really strong film. That was great. I'm glad those worked out. We had some. I mean, this was the most difficult festival yet to actually put on in terms of sourcing the films and actually getting stuff that was screenable because they came from so many places that and were not necessarily not all the films have digital versions ready for North America. So like Cairo Station was very tricky because what they sent us was actually done at 25 frames per second instead of 24 frames per second. You wouldn't think that would be a big deal, but it's not going to play right and it's going to be very noticeable to the audience. So we had to, I'm not going to go into all the stuff that went on behind the scenes, but there was some pretty down to the wire technical issues that, I don't know how much you knew about that, but we had a screw up with the subtitles on Le Bête Humaine. They were just tiny, tiny, tiny subtitles that were not readable. And I don't know how that happened, but we only got that fixed like 6 or 8 hours before the film screened
Yikes!
Sunday
Yeah,
afternoon.
and I
So
thought,
yeah,
yeah,
it was
wow. Yeah, no, I would. The thing about Cairo Station that kind of struck me too was it felt so much also like an Italian neo-realist film. You know what I mean? It had that very much the same kind of feel and all the stuff with the unionization. And that was just interesting to see that. It was just interesting to see that because that was also things that were happening kind of in post-World War II films. You know, it wasn't like just that they were noir. A lot of the films also seemed to have a lot around kind of social and political issues as well. Oh, and I just wanted to say,
Yeah, it's
go ahead.
no, you go.
I was just gonna say, and the other thing I thought was funny when you introduced Odd Man Out, you know, you're talking about how like you can't even really tell it's like about the IRA, that they just seemed like gangsters, but to me it was so like, to me it was like it was so clear that it was IRA and all the things that went into that and stuff like that. But I don't know if that's because I lived in the UK for so long and that's why, but to me it was like really obviously about the IRA.
It is. It's just interesting that they couldn't really. They kind of removed all the politics from the movie, even though you know that's what it's about. Because you know, it's just like in the United States, you know, making a picture like No Way Out or something like that. There's a certain number of people who were terrified because it's like we can't play this film in the South. You know, and I'm sure with that film they were thinking the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, we're going to lose whole sections of the UK if we make this too political. So, but it, you know, it's just a terrific film. And anyway, I think people seem to be very, very happy with the festival as a whole, and the idea of pairing an English language film with a similar film in a foreign language, I think really paid off. I was very surprised. I just from conversations with people, I wasn't at all surprised that Victims of Sin, the Mexican film with Nino Sevilla, was a huge hit, because it was when I showed it the first time, like 11 years ago or something. And now to have it in this beautifully restored version, which I hope we'll be able to show at festivals throughout the year, was just thrilling. But I was very surprised at how many people loved L'Autre, Jacques Becker's L'Autre, which I programmed with Black Tuesday on a Monday night.
Yeah.
Because I just felt like, you know, there are two prison break movies, and my experience has taught me that prison break movies are not a huge draw, that women don't necessarily like prison break movies. And you know, but the place was absolutely packed on a Monday night, and people loved that movie. They could not stop raving about it. So, which surprised me, and the second big surprise was how few people had seen it. I mean, that really kind of amazed me. Like I thought this was a more well-known film than it appeared to be. So, and it was the longest film of the, you know, it was 131 minutes, the longest film of the festival. And it just sped by. And you know, I was very nervous about showing it on a weeknight because it was going to end so late, but it's so suspenseful and it's such a great movie that I had no complaints. People just loved it.
Yeah, and I also really liked the Japanese film a lot. A lot.
Yeah, Zero Focus.
What was it called again?
It's called Zero Focus.
Zero Focus. I knew zero is in the title. Yeah, I just thought that was excellent. Like, I don't know. I just love Japanese films because I love their cinematography, and I love Japanese still photography as well. And I just thought it was just such an interesting, it was an interesting premise, and the characters were really well done. And then it was kind of funny because at the end, there's sort of like this very sort of, and it's not like a long speech or anything, but there's just like a little philosophical bit at the end that I really loved, even though I heard people snickering. But to me, it was like very Japanese, you know what I mean? And it was just like, I don't know. I thought it was just wonderful. And like I said, I was kind of weirded out that people kind of snickered at the end. And it's sort of like, do you not like any depth
I don't worry
movies?
about that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't.
I mean, I don't worry about that. Sometimes, Anne, I have learned that when the people are laughing or snickering, all it really means is like it's a hipster, or somebody thinks they're a hipster. It's kind of their way of saying, "Oh, I see what they're doing. I get it. I recognize it," and they laugh like, "Oh yeah, of course." And it's very condescending, and it's kind of stupid because I agree with you. I thought the end of that movie is very profound, and also it's, we've had many questions here on this program about, are there any noir films with, female detective
Yeah.
protagonists, right? And like that's specifically why I included that film in the program, is because you get not one really intriguing female character, not two female characters, but three, right? And you're never quite sure like who's the antagonist and who's the protagonist, and that film is remarkable for a movie made in 1960, for how complex not just the storytelling but the editing, which jumps around in time without any of the usual uh, cautionary techniques that signal we've now changed time periods. They just do it. They just go from one to the next, and they trust that the audience is going to be intelligent enough to keep up with what's happening, because and that's why that film is so, it's so complex, the story, but it's so fast. It's so fast paced. You can't, it's only 90 minutes long, and it seems like an epic in terms of how much information is in the film and how many backstories they get into and what was really happening in the post-war world in Japan and all this stuff. And then you realize, my God, this movie is just flying by. And I agree. I really, really liked that movie. So I'm sure we'll have another chance to show it at other fests.
Yeah, I certainly hope so, because like I said, that was a real highlight for me. Oh my gosh, it was just so good. And like you said, it just covers so many different things, and it just has so many. I mean, really, the female characters are the ones that are well developed. The male characters aren't really that well developed. The focus is really
The
on
men
the women.
are total ciphers. They're
Yeah.
they're meaningless characters in a way. I mean, even the central guy who goes missing that sets the whole plot in motion, you never really learn that much about him or what kind of a person he was. But the female characters are all completely fascinating. Okay, we've
See that
teased
enough.
that enough. Now, if you can find that somewhere, and I have to say, I was very excited because that was another where things came together in a beautiful way, because there was only a standard definition version of that film. I'm gonna tell a story now, and I hope it kind of stays within the bounds of this show. So that, but I really wanted to show the movie. There was only an SD version of it with English subtitles. I thought I could. I thought I found an HD version of the film in Japan, and I bought it. We paid for the rights to show the movie, but you still have to find something good to show, because the person who owns the movie doesn't always have the best version to show. And when I got it, it didn't have English subtitles.
Okay.
So I was really ticked off that I was moving a little too fast and messed that up and realized I can't show this. But my pal Peter Conheim, who is the one responsible for that fabulous restoration of Victims of Sin, he bailed me out both on Bet Human and on Zero Focus, because he found a version of the film online that was the high def version that I had bought in Japan, but he was able to find somebody who had a file that was the SD version of the film with the English subtitles. Nice shot, cat butt cinema. And we were able to pull just the subtitle file off the
Yeah.
SD version and marry it to the high def version. And as far as I know, that's the only one in existence.
Yeah.
It's the one that we created for this festival. So I'm pretty psyched about that. So that's what we will be showing up in up in Seattle this week. We'll be screening that version of the film. So pretty exciting.
Yeah, and Seattle starts tomorrow for people watching at home.
Seattle starts tomorrow. I will be hosting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And then on Monday I have to leave town, but Vince Keenan, I think Rosemary will be there. Vince and Rosemary Keenan, who of course I've talked about on the show last week. I showed their Edith Head novels that they wrote. Vince will be pinch hitting for me as the host the rest of the way once I have to leave town. And I'm sure fans of this show know Vince as the former editor in chief of the Noir City magazine, which he's off doing interesting other projects now. And so Imogen Sarah Smith is now the editor in chief of the magazine. So I can't think of better people than those two. So
And you'll be doing a book signing
all,
there too, right?
Also, there will be a book signing as well. I think it's on Saturday night. At some point Saturday night between the matinee and evening shows, there will be a book signing. Do I know what book I'm signing? I have no idea. The bookstore will decide that. It's either going to be cocktails or kids' book, one or the other. Shall we get to questions, Anne? Shall we dive into these questions? And who wants to start?
I will start. It seems there are several actors who were in mini noirs that later broke away from studios to create their own production company and make noirs of their own. Ida Lupino, Mark Stevens, Dick Powell are a few that come to mind. Do you know of any independent noirs made by former noir actors that were as commercially or critically successful as the preeminent studio noirs, or were these indie noirs relegated to obscurity at the time because they lacked the distribution deals that the large studios had?
Okay. Interesting. So it's intriguing because Neil mentions three filmmakers, Ida Lupino, Mark Stevens, and Dick Powell, who honestly weren't particularly successful at being independent producers. I mean, Ida was to a degree. Mark Stevens made a few films, and Dick Powell made just a few, but mostly with other people, where he was a partner with other people. The two that are really significant that immediately come to mind are John Garfield, who in 1947 created Enterprise Pictures, and it was a whole studio that he started on his own, to get out of his deal at Warner Brothers and do the films that he wanted to make. And that was arguably his biggest success of all time, was Body and Soul, which was made by Enterprise and distributed. I think it was either distributed through United Artists or through MGM. I can't remember right now. I know Force of Evil was distributed. It was another Enterprise film that was distributed by MGM. But Body and Soul was the only picture that Garfield produced through Enterprise that actually made money. And the studio only lasted a couple of years because they just picked the wrong projects. It's an interesting thing to realize that artists are not always the people who should be in charge of the money.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Because they're just like, we're going to spend whatever it takes to get this the way we want it. And that's not always the solution. And Enterprise was, Bob Roberts, who was Garfield's partner, was not the most trustworthy man to begin with. And they ended up having a huge falling out and the whole thing collapsed. The other producer who was the one that almost this question that Neil is asking, it's designed for, is Burt Lancaster, because everything Burt Lancaster did when he got to Hollywood was noir. So you could actually, at the time he started his own production company, you could say that Burt Lancaster was a noir actor. Mm-hmm. Right? You couldn't genuinely say that John Garfield was a noir actor. He was an actor who had appeared in a lot of film noir. But it really wasn't until the 1950s that Burt Lancaster started doing stuff like The Crimson Pirate and all that. I see her sneaking in there. She's looking for a little affection. So but yeah, and then Burt Lancaster produced stuff that, there were some pretty successful movies in there. Um, but The Crimson Pirate was the one that really was a huge success. And of course, he would later go on to produce arguably my favorite film of the 1950s, Sweet Smell of Success. That was Burt Lancaster's own. Hill, Hecht, Lancaster, the three guys that ran that. And it was apparently a real den of iniquity.
Oh,
working
okay.
with those guys was life shortening for a lot of people. Burt Lancaster was not a particularly nice guy. His stories would indicate, but those two I would say are the most successful in terms of independent producers, and not the only ones for sure, but amongst famous actors, I would cite those two at the top.
And Humphrey Bogart also had a production company.
Of course. Good call. Yes, Santana Productions. He produced In a Lonely Place. Only my favorite movie of all time, right? But yeah, the Santana films were pretty good. That whole period from the time he made Knock on Any Door through In a Lonely Place and Beat the Devil, and these were films that he chose to make, and he was kind of the power behind them. John Huston was involved a little bit, and he had a coterie of people he trusted. But yeah, I'd say that those three guys, good call. And I'd forgotten about Santana Productions. Okay, Adrian wants to know: is it possible to discuss the kind of black and white film that was used for film noir? Kodak. Some films look great, others not so good. Well, that's not always the film stock that's in question there. Sure, some have been copied many times from the original or fully restored, but was cheaper film used for cheaper productions? How long would it take to process the film? Did one kind of film edge out another? Was one preferred because it was more flexible as far as speed and lighting? That would certainly be the case before long. Were different brands and types of films mixed for various effects? I don't know about that. And high speed versus low speed. Okay. I am not really the best person to answer this question. I wish my dear late friend John Bailey, the cinematographer, was around. I could have put him on a Zoom call to answer all of this stuff, but it's mostly was all the same stock. Obviously, originally, when the film stocks had a much higher resolution in the grain, they had to be lit. So the artistry of lighting for film noir was that you had to make it look dark and moody at the same time you were exposing it with enough light that you would get a sharp, detailed image on the screen. I do not think that it was a different, cheaper film stock used for B movies and things. I just think that they were more cheaply made. The production, I mean, when you see like when we restore a B film, something like The Hunted, that was made, through Allied artists, and then photographed by Henry Sharp, the cinematography is just as good as anybody else. It's just that they're rushing. They're rushing to do everything. So the camera setups aren't as complicated. The lighting effects aren't as subtle. That's really the difference. It has really nothing to do with the film stock. Now, I will say that there was a film in the festival that we just showed, Black Tuesday, by the great Stanley Cortez, photographed it, and that used a different film stock. That was, I think, the first Hollywood film to be shot on Tri-X film. And if anybody is a photographer or a filmmaker who shot in 16 millimeter or anything like that, that Tri-X was the film that you used to shoot in lower light conditions. It was more sensitive than, I guess, when I was shooting stuff, we called it Plus X and Tri-X. I'm sure people are watching this who know way more about this than I do. But yes, Stanley Cortez used that film specifically to shoot. And oh, well, now this is new.
Yeah, well, the other one was new too. So the other one was Ellie. This is Tyrion. Say hello, Tyrion. You gonna turn
Tyrion,
around?
what a beauty! I love black cats.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
he's in love with you, Anne. Come on.
yeah. So these are my dear friend Brendan's
Oh,
cats. I'm taking care of them for a couple months.
oh, look at that guy.
Yeah.
Tyrion looks just like a guy, a feral cat that lives outside our house now that we feed every night. And he comes up on the porch. We can talk to him and look at him through the window, but he won't let us be on the porch at the same time. And he looks just like Tyrion. We call him Benito. I don't know why.
No, it's a good
Not
name for a
not
big
for
black cat.
Benito Mussolini, but yeah, and he's getting a little too fat. Anyway, that's pretty funny. So I think that's about all I have on that one,
Okay.
Adrian. That was that's a good question, but I wish I was more knowledgeable to answer that stuff specifically. But my understanding was most everything was Kodak film. Uh, I could be wrong, but I think that's that would later change. But they certainly almost had the monopoly on everything back in the studio system.
Okay, so I'm going to do a share screen for the next question. Oh my
Oh,
God, Ellie, what are you doing?
oh,
Sorry,
oh. Is
she's
she flying?
she's on top of the curtain rod.
Oh my God.
Okay,
She
what?
climbed up the curtains?
No, she jumped from the cat perch and she is now doing
Okay.
her
Well,
circus act.
if all of a sudden you're covered, you're in a shroud momentarily, we'll know what happened.
You'll know what
Boy,
happened.
this I can see the teaser for this episode already. With lots of cat action this week. Tune in for the see
Oh my
the
God. Okay.
havoc caused in Anne's apartment. Okay, now you have to do two things. You have to keep an eye on Ellie while you do this screen share thing.
Four cats are
Because
too many, just so everyone knows. I have a one bedroom
oh yeah,
apartment.
I've had five. I had five at one time, and that was enough.
Okay, so let me do the share screen here. Let's just get over here. Hold on. Share screen.
And I can see I saw this image in advance, and so I'm going to take a stab at this, but I'm not positive of the answer.
Okay. See if it's going to work.
Okay. We are very low tech here, so bear with us, people.
Okay, wait a minute. Let's try this again.
There we go. You got it. You got it.
You can, okay.
So they ask, what in the world is George concocting for Ida and while the city sleeps? The suspicion here was that he was muddling a small green apple. That would be very unsuccessful to try to muddle an apple in a fluted glass like that. You're going to break that glass muddling an apple. It appears to me what. Pardon me.
I thought it was a peach. I assumed it was a Bellini, but
It's either a peach or a lemon. I mean, because if it's a peach, it's a Bellini. If it's a lemon, it's a French 75. And I can't tell if there's like a sugar cube in it as well. If there was a sugar cube in it, which might in fact be what's in the bottom of the glass, the one that he's pouring in, it might be a dissolving sugar cube and a muddled. I mean, to me, it's absurd that would be muddling half of a lemon in the glass. It just really just calls for a little bit of lemon juice and a peel. But they do things big in Hollywood, and so I'm sure they, So I think we've got it covered there, Anne. It's either a Bellini or it's a French 75.
oh, you got down
One
for the
or the
run.
other. Dave, success.
Okay.
Okay. Ida looks particularly great in that photo, by the way.
She does. I love her in that movie. She's so like awesome and
Yeah.
great in it. Just super like this really sophisticated, kind of tough newspaper lady.
Yeah,
She's so awesome in it.
yeah. She's always great, but in this image, for some reason, she is particularly sexy to me in this shot.
Yeah, I
So,
love this. I have a still too where she's looking through like the little, I can't forget what it's like, a little viewfinder or something. Like she's at the bar with the two. No,
oh,
no,
when she looks at she thinks it's a risque picture, and then it's the baby picture. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
that's pretty cute.
yeah.
All right, so okay, here is a question from Liz. Says there are so many organized crime films that focus on different U.S. cities. And then she lists the Phoenix City Story, The Case Against Brooklyn, Portland Expose, Kansas City Confidential, Las Vegas Shakedown, Chicago Syndicate, Inside Detroit, Miami Expose. after and she says, after watching Kansas City Confidential, which was incredible, I am at an impasse of what to watch next. Well, Liz, here is the bad news. None of those films, except the Phoenix City Story, are as good as Kansas City Confidential. But Kansas City Confidential only has the city name in it because that was a hot thing at the time. It's not a film about organized crime at all. It's a heist picture. You know, it's a caper film specifically because the heist like happens right off the bat, and then the caper part is the guys meeting up to split the dough later. You know, not knowing who they are because they were all masked, and it's like a totally different thing. The other films are all you know, 50s expose films. I should have, I know around, I have all of those books around here in my office. Jack Late and Lee Mortimer were the two journalists who made a fortune in the 50s. They did a book called USA Confidential. And then it became like a series of books: New York Confidential, San Francisco Confidential, LA Confidential, which, you know, there was an LA Confidential before James Elroy. And just all of those books were nonfiction books about the vice in those cities. It was almost like a travel guide. Like if you want to go, you know, find the red light district or where to gamble or where do you find the bookies, those books would tell you, you know, masquerading as, you know, we're revealing the expose and blah blah blah, but they're also telling you like where to go to do this stuff. But the movies, it was just the quality of these films varies dramatically. The Phoenix City Story is a great movie. Phil Carlson took that film very, very seriously. And The Case Against Brooklyn, directed by Paul Wenkos, is a very underrated film. And it's early Darren McGavin. And it's really good. All the other ones, Portland Expose, Chicago Syndicate, Inside Detroit, Miami Expose, they're really only interesting because most of them are shot on location. So you get to see those cities. There's also New Orleans Uncensored, I think, is another one that you could put on that list. And there are more Chicago ones than just Chicago Syndicate. There's is a Chicago Confidential as well. Uh, you know, take your pick. I mean, they don't play particularly well when you're sitting home alone watching them. If you show them in a movie theater with a crowd from that city, like I've shown Inside Detroit at the Redford Theater in Detroit, and the audience just went nuts for it. They loved it because they're seeing famous landmarks in the city as they were in 1955, and everybody loves that, you know. So, and the same is true of the Chicago pictures and Miami, which is not a it's not a particularly good film, but it's not that bad either. So I'm not helping you as to which one to watch next, except the Phoenix City Story, which is based entirely on a true story, and is one of the great true crime movies of this era. I would heartily recommend. It's a very, very different film from Kansas City Confidential, though.
Yeah, Martin Scorsese talked about it in his documentary, 100 Years of Film. and he did a really nice section
Talk
on it.
about Phoenix City.
Phoenix City, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think I probably had the longest intro I've ever done on Noir Alley and TCM was the intro and outro for the Phoenix City story because there's just so much to it. Like comparing the real story to what they put on the screen and how they actually went there and shot on location while the crimes that are described in the movie were still under investigation. They were making the movie with no solution to the crime having been reached. And then, later on, you realize that between the articles written about Phoenix City and the movie, they ended up indicting like 700 people in the
Wow.
town, including a lot of cops and politicians. And, it was a big deal. It was a house cleaning in that city. And the guy in question, the character played by Richard Kiley, uh, ended up becoming, the attorney general, of Alabama. That was a pretty big deal. So anyway, interesting question there, Liz, and I hope we gave you some semblance of an answer.
So was there any like expose movies like this about San Francisco?
Not really. I have to say, the San Francisco is not a particularly vice-ridden city back in the day.
Yeah.
Like when the mob came west, they really went south.
Yeah.
They like the weather in LA, and of course, there was a stopover in Vegas on the way
Yeah.
that was very intriguing to them. And yeah, I mean, where you have gangsters like Ben Siegel and Harry Cohn and Jack, these guys who were synonymous with LA, there was no one like that in San Francisco. There was
I
no
think
well-known organized crime figure in San Francisco.
that's true. And I think maybe part of the reason why the mafia didn't come here too is because of the triads. I mean, we have organized crime in San Francisco. It's just,
Uh,
but those people are not public figures, though. They're not
yeah,
like,
and as long as the police had it surrounded, I mean, there was always crime in Chinatown and the tongs and all that stuff. But as long as the predominantly the Irish police force in San Francisco just kept it under control, nobody really cared. I mean, it was like a quid pro quo kind of setup. We'll let you operate, just don't stray into the neighborhoods.
yeah.
Uh,
Even though people might not know this, but at one point things did get very violent between the triads here in San Francisco. And when that was interesting thing about that is when they started really trying to recruit Chinese Americans into the cops. So they would, because part of the problem is their surveillance was worthless because they couldn't understand anything. And I'm going to tell you my Chinatown story. So
okay,
I have a lot
it.
of Chinatown stories because Brendan used to live there. So I spent a lot of time there. But so Brendan and I like walked through Stockton Tunnel and we're coming up the street going to where he lived, which by the way was the building was right in front of the stop that in DOA that he gets off on. And it's literally the stop I used to use. Anyway, so walking through China, and so we come out of the tunnel and there's like this gaggle of older Chinese people. And there's like a Chinese American cop talking to one of them. And then his white partner is like surrounded by these Chinese people. And he's like, you have to wait. I don't understand you. And I so wanted to go up to him and say, it's Chinatown, Jake, but I refrained from doing.
Would he have been amused? Would he have been amused? I don't know.
I don't know. Either everybody thought I was crazy and had no idea what I was talking about.
But you raise a very interesting point when you talked about how they needed to recruit more Asian Americans for the police force, because that was certainly true. During the 1970s, we had, San Francisco let's put it this way, was famous for disorganized crime, right? Organized crime was not that big a problem here. Disorganized crime, with just total lunatics running wild. And and all the craziness that resulted. And the only thing we had that was kind of like that was the legendary zebra killings, which I think a lot, the Zodiac took all the headlines because it was like the lone crazy person. He was like movie ready, the Zodiac, But the zebra killing was a terrorist thing with African Americans targeting people, and with the story was it was like a Nation of Islam thing, not clearly sanctioned by the Nation of Islam, but these kids all met at these Nation of Islam meetings and things, and then just went rogue and started killing people. And it was like an initiation that you had to go out and kill a white person on the street. And, the future mayor, Art Agnos, was one of the guys who was shot by these kids who astoundingly, and my reason for bringing this up is just saying that there were two black police officers who played a big part in finally solving the crime. And the offshoot of it was they needed more black people on the police force because the African American community just would not cooperate with an all-white, predominantly Irish police force. And there was a lot of controversy back then about racial profiling because that was the police department. Their only way of dealing with this was to say, well, we have to be able to stop every black man on the street. And, they're all suspicious to us. And that was, holy cow, was that a powder keg? But those kids were so dumb. Sorry if any of you are still around. I'm calling you dumb because they used the same gun to commit every crime. It was like a ritualistic thing. They would say, "Here's the gun," and it's like if they had used different guns, they probably never would have solved that case.
Yeah.
Right. But they used the same damn gun every time. Sorry. I mean, this is kind of unpleasant talk now for a movie centric thing. To talk a little bit too much about true crime can be a little off putting. And of course, the same thing happened with the triads and all that stuff when younger kids got involved and they were a little, hot-headed and needed to prove themselves. And then you had the Golden Dragon Massacre and all that kind of stuff in Chinatown, which is just, it wasn't like that. I mean, there was always crime in San Francisco, but it was like one-off things that seemed controllable. And then all of a sudden, in the 60s and 70s, it was just like, holy cow.
Yeah. And they were bringing young guys over from Hong Kong, and these guys were using machetes. It was really bad.
Yeah. It's pretty scary stuff. Makes film noir, like I've pointed out several times. People watch film noir as comfort food because it was made at a time before things got totally out of control. So the crime seems understandable and manageable as opposed to complete random craziness, which is pretty much what San Francisco turned into, with the killings of George Moscone and Harvey Milk by another politician, the whole People's Temple thing, the Zodiac, the zebra. This was my upbringing. I mean, how could I not be a noir guy when I grew up with, wondering every day you left the house, I'm not getting on the bus. The Zodiac said he was going to target kids on the school bus. I'm not getting on a school bus. Hell no. So,
of course, in noir, the guilty are punished, which is the nice part about noir.
Well, so are the innocent.
Yeah, good point.
But I don't know how many people remember that Dirty Harry was all about that. Dirty Harry was about the Zodiac and the whole idea of, crime is now run amok. You need, this fascist cop to come in and bring order, like the Wild West or something. And the whole scene with the guy on the bus where Eastwood jumps down off the overpass that was all inspired by the Zodiac. It was just somebody, forget who wrote Dirty Harry now, but they were running wild with the fear that the Zodiac instilled in the city.
So do you know who Don Siegel wanted for the bad guy in that originally?
As the bad guy, as Scorpio.
As Scorpio?
No, I know that Frank Sinatra was originally considered to play Dirty Harry, but I don't know about the villain.
Audie Murphy.
Oh, of course you would know that. You
Yeah.
know all things Audie Murphy. Well, that would have been amazing, right?
Yeah, it would have been great.
I
It
mean,
would have been great. Yeah.
yeah, he could. I mean, as interesting as that would have been, he could not in any way be better than Andy Robinson.
Or
Andy
Andy Robinson
Robinson
was great. Yeah.
kind of raised the bar for psychopaths in that movie, and I love the fact that later on Don Siegel kind of made it up to him because he gave him a normal, nice guy role in Charlie Varick,
Yeah.
where he didn't have to be this raving lunatic like he is in Dirty Harry. Wow, he was pretty nightmarish in that film.
Yeah, it's
Anyway,
interesting too because when you watch Hellraiser, he plays sort of this nice guy, and it's his brother who's evil. But then at the end, the brother possesses him, his body, and he just turns like that, and he's so gross. And it's really
yeah,
great.
well, those actors are amazing when they realize I can have a career if I don't care how I come off on screen and I just look like a complete freaking lunatic.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, it was Dirty Harry was such a time capsule movie. Man, it had the pulse of what was going on at that time, and yeah, okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. And boy, Don Siegel can direct a movie. Holy
Yeah.
cow!
There you go.
Okay, God, we're only at number 5. Okay, and I think
Okay,
it's you.
we need to keep on target.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
know.
Okay.
We're doing some real rambling here. I hope people are keeping up.
Okay, and this is Greg from Lake Charles, Louisiana. What are your favorite films of the noir genre based on plays by William Shakespeare? Which do you think is the best and why?
Wow, interesting. Greg from Lake Charles, Louisiana. That was a reference to the right. Isn't that up on Cripple Creek and by the band? I think
Oh
that was
yeah,
Lake Charles, Louisiana.
yeah, you're right.
Little
Oh,
Betsy girl I once knew. Yeah. Anyway,
you're right.
okay.
You're
It's
right.
not the
I didn't
only
even
thing that
catch
Lake
that.
Charles, Louisiana is famous for, but okay. Okay. Films based on William Shakespeare. I got to think about this for a second because I got to figure out what. Well, okay. Right off the top, the best one, without question. There is no other option. Is A Double Life.
Oh yeah,
The George
yeah.
Cukor directed film A Double Life, starring Ronald Colman, because it's not it's Othello, but it's not. It's about the making of the play and how Ronald Colman, who is fantastic in this movie, it's about the dangers of method acting. That's basically what the film is, right? I mean, he gets so into his roles that if he does a comedy, he's the greatest guy in the world. And when he does a psychodrama, he becomes a psychopath. So there's that one. There's also, I know another, what's the other Hamlet? There's another Hamlet
It's
noir.
Carl Front directed it.
Um,
And I cannot remember the name of it, but I'm pretty sure Carl Front directed it.
yeah,
Or
okay. And I know there are people who think that House of Strangers, Joe Mankiewicz's House of Strangers, is kind of a I'm forgetting, my ignorance of Shakespeare is showing here because I can't remember
oh, is that like
all
Lear
these things.
because of the three sons? Is that why they think of it as Lear? Where he's
Yeah, I
splitting
think
the
it's
yeah.
like a Lear, and of course to me the greatest Shakespeare adaptation of all time um, was Throne of Blood, was Kurosawa's Throne of Blood, which is
Well,
not a noir film, um,
and also
but
Ron because that's Lear too. Oh, and he did a
and
Hamlet as well. Oh my
and
God, The Bad Sleep Well. I friggin' love The Bad
The
Sleep
Bad Sleep
Well.
Well. That's
God,
the one
that's a
I'm
great
thinking of. The
movie.
Bad Sleep Well. Yeah.
Such a great movie.
Yes, those are. everybody talks about Kurosawa and the early noirish stuff like Stray Dog and Drunken Angel, but High and Low, which I guess is now being remade, uh, I, I guess Spike Lee and Denzel Washington are remaking High and
Oh,
Low, and
based
The
on a
Bad
novel by
Sleep
Ed
Well, which is
McBain.
exactly
And actually, in one of the 8-7 precinct stories, someone's complaining about, oh, how they show cops in movies. No, they're talking about, they're talking, Meyer is talking about bald cops in movies. And the 3 movies he references are all movies based on Ed McBain stories. And then he said,
hmm,
yeah, and there was even like this
classic.
Japanese one where this guy was bald. Yeah, anyway.
Ah,
And
okay,
he's doing like this little
okay.
thing about cops and stuff, and he managed to work in High and Low into the adaptations of his books. Sorry, ranted.
No, I have to go back and look at some more of that the 87 precinct stuff because those were there have been a number of those adapted to film, but they're not really noir. They're more
Yeah.
police procedural type stuff, so they don't really get included in there.
And 2 of them were
Um,
turned into
but
Columbo films. Ed McBain story, 87
and
precinct stories. Sorry.
no, I'm just kind of drawing a blank on other.
Yeah.
There was one, I think, Strange Illusion, I
Strange
think,
Illusion.
by
That was the one
Edgar
I was
G.
trying to remember.
Ulmer.
It was Ulmer. Yeah. That was the one I was trying to
Yeah,
remember.
yeah. That's a. I'm trying to remember the storyline. I just remember reading somewhere where Ulmer said, it was basically this Shakespearean thing done as a B movie. Um, but that's it. I mean, to me, it's a double life is the one. I mean, it is not based on a Shakespeare play, but it is about the mounting of a Shakespearean production of Othello, and Ronald Colman being the actor who loses his mind in the middle of the production. So, and a great film, which I don't get to show enough.
And also for old
Okay.
time radio fans, go to YouTube, Jack Benny, A Double Life. Because there he goes on the radio show, he goes to, because Ronnie was on a ton of his, that actually kept Ronnie's career alive, was being a guest star on Jack Benny's show. So when A Double Life came out, then they have this whole episode where Jack goes to the premiere of it, and then he runs into Ronnie and Benita afterwards, and tells Ronnie how he should have done this one scene.
Oh, that's got to be great, man. Jack Benny and Ronald Colman. I mean, come on, incredible.
Yeah.
So, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but I'm going to throw this out there because I'm sure the people watching this will know this. What is the movie that Ronald Colman did where he was like the world's smartest man, and he went on a game show?
Champagne for Caesar.
Champagne for Caesar. Very good.
Vincent Price
Well
was
done.
friggin' hilarious
Yeah,
in it.
Vincent Price is hilarious in that movie. Absolutely hilarious. I just love that. It's like the best movie about game shows on American television. Weren't that many at that time. Like they immediately saw the potential for the comedy of this, that he would just break the bank by knowing the answer to everything. Oh man, that Champagne for Caesar. Thank you for that. Thank you. And if folks haven't seen it and they want to watch something really funny, there you go.
Yeah, highly
Watch A
highly
Double Life.
recommended.
Watch A Double Life, which is Ronald Colman at his most serious, and then watch Champagne for Caesar, where he plays it pretty straight, but it's a really really funny movie. Vincent Price though,
Oh yeah, he's incredible in it.
steals the whole movie. Steals the whole movie. Okay, now Mike says, I've heard Eddie say that many film noir are like tragedies. Mike agrees, but he sees one difference. Classical tragedies are always about a person from the nobility brought low by some flaw or fault. I see what you did here, and like tying this into the Shakespeare thing. Uh, I see the one brought low in noir being a middle class or working class person, never a noble or the modern equivalent. Are there noirs that have what we could call a noble main character with a tragic ending? And I'm assuming here, Mike, that you're talking about noble is like nobility, like someone of the upper class in the aristocracy, because there are many noble characters in noir who are poor. But I don't sense that's what you're thinking of. Now, it's interesting that you say this, Mike, because I refer to someone with greater expertise than I on this subject, which is my friend and council member of the Film Noir Foundation, Dennis Lehane, who has written more than his fair share of noir-stained mysteries and things and historical fiction. And Dennis has always called noir working class tragedy. That's his definition of it. So that fits just with what Mike is saying here, you know. And there's a ton of these. But if you're asking about, you know, I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but the people who made noir had an incredible suspicion of the upper class.
Uh-huh.
That's like one of the defining things when you really start looking at film noir. Invariably, the villain is going to be the rich guy.
Yep.
Right? And that's just the way it is. And then later on in neo-noir, the villains are the corporations.
Uh-huh.
And the guys who are protecting the corporations. There is not a single noir film, in my estimation, made in the last 50 years where the villainy does not lead to the boardroom of the corporation that is secretly running everything. That's essentially the bottom line of every noir. So, you know, you're speaking of a different era here, Mike, when you talk about, and you know, in classic tragedies, were kind of written for the aristocracy, the people who really got to go and see the plays, and they wanted to see stories about them and their tragedies. And you know, popular movies that you can see for a quarter at the local cinema are going to be more about working class people. I mean, that's who's going to see them, right? I mean, I don't know that I've ever seen a particularly wealthy person attending a Noir City Film Festival. They may graciously donate to the foundation, but are they going to go and see the movies with our audience in the movie theater? Probably not, because I don't have a roped off section just for them. You know, it's very democratic. So I think that noir is, as Mike suggests, much more a working class and lower middle class type of storytelling, and always cautionary tales about people who want too much. I mean, you know, that's basically the bottom line of all these stories. Is like I was born poor and impatient, you know, like John Garfield almost said in Force of Evil. You know, there are three ways to get ahead in this country, right? You can be born rich, you can work hard all your life for it, or you can steal it. And I was born poor and impatient. That's like the greatest opening lines that Abe Polanski decided to cut out of the film because he thought it was too on the nose.
Yeah.
But I quote it all the time. Anyway.
Okay. So, anyway, so this is from
we're
Pete.
At number 7.
It's from Pete. I saw The Dark Past for the first time this week with 2 superb leads, Lee J. Cobb and William Holden. It was a deep and satisfying watch. Nor or not, maybe not. It's very the desperate hours, and Holden is doing his best angry bogey while Cobb sucks on his pipe and attempts to teach him chess. Nina Foch is a weak link, unfortunately, worth a couple of minutes analysis by the Naboob of noir. I guess that's you.
I'm the nabob. It's the nabob.
Nabob.
The nabob of noir. Yeah.
Keep up the good work and bring the noir events to the UK, please.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see if we can do that sometime, Pete. It's interesting. The Dark Past was originally made in 1939, the first version. So it's very much a pre-film noir movie. It was called Blind Alley. Chester Morris played the part that William Holden has in the remake. I enjoy watching the film. I don't think very highly of it. I think it was a little absorbed with all of the psychoanalytical mumbo jumbo that was very, very popular at the time in movies. Like psychiatry would solve everything. It's an interesting to see Lee J. Cobb give a low-key performance at that point in his career, and he is pretty low-key in the film. It's one of my least favorite William Holden movies. I don't think he's particularly right for the part, and they try to make him look different by giving him that butch haircut and everything. And I don't know. It just I think you could have had. The film would have been better with somebody other than William Holden, which is no offense to him as an actor because I love him, And I mean, the very next year he's going to make Sunset Boulevard and give one of the great performances ever, in my estimation. And I don't think Nina Folk is actually is bad in that film. I just think there's not much to the character. It's not a well-written character, but I think she's pretty good. I think she does a lot with an underwritten character to make her very intriguing in her scenes. And whether or not she's going to like betray him or whatever is pretty interesting. And the movies end differently. That's all I'll say. That's just for Pete. One of them has kind of a really downbeat ending, and one of them has a safety valve ending. And I'll just leave it at that. I'm not sure which of the two versions I actually prefer.
Yeah, and I think too on this one, like I think that Kubrick made it to me to think not Kubrick, gee whiz. Sorry. God, I've lost my place now because I said Kubrick. Sam Fuller.
It's okay, we can edit this part out.
We can edit this part. Sam Fuller made a film that I think covers kind of the same territory, but much better. With the guy Jesus Christ, it's something USA.
Underworld USA.
Underworld USA. And to me, that covers like really similar territory, but is way, way, way better of a film.
Yeah, you're right. In terms of the motivation driving the central, sociopathic central character, it's way better in Underworld USA. I mean, it's just, to me, The Dark Past is just one of those movies where it's all about uncovering the motivation that drives this character, which is really interesting because, the same year that came out, so did White Heat, which is, another psychopath who has issues, from his past that drive him to do this, which is kind of interesting because at a certain point, there was a backlash amongst people in authority suggesting like, well, we can't keep making movies in which all the bad people have an excuse for their behavior. They're just bad. Just make them bad. And The Dark Past is like the ultimate example of the bad guy who everything will be fine once the compassionate psychiatrist solves the mystery at the core of his being, then everything will be all right. And it's like, well, Really?
Well, that's not how
I
psychiatry
mean,
works.
it may help the guy. It doesn't help all the people that the guy killed.
Well, there's that, but also it's not really how psychiatry works. It's not like, okay, I've discovered your trauma and now we're fine. It's no, you have to work through the trauma,
Yeah,
which is a very long
exactly. Like the light
process.
switch goes off, and then it's like, oh, if only I'd known, I wouldn't have killed those 5 or 6 people. If only I had known. Yeah. So anyway, sorry,
Yeah.
Pete. I don't mean to sound like I'm dumping on dark past, but it's an interesting film. It uses that weird solarized stuff to show his flashbacks to the events of his life. That it was pretty intriguing for the time. Nobody had done that that I was aware of before. So, um, anyway, okay, Susan from Moscow, Tennessee. She just rewatched To Die For with Nicole Kidman, and it seems to have all the elements of noir: femme fatale, dead husband, male chump, cops, and yet not quite. Maybe because it's perversely funny. Can you discuss? Well, I'm going to confess that I haven't seen To Die For since it came out, and I remember thinking this is a film noir when I first saw it, and I thought Nicole Kidman was pretty great in the film. Ileana Douglas is great in the film as well. Um, I don't see why, because it's perversely funny, disqualifies it from being a film noir. The Last Seduction with Linda Fiorentino is totally a noir, and it is really perversely funny.
Yeah.
So I don't think that's a disqualifying thing. I mean, a lot of the classic noir films to me are perversely funny.
Yeah.
Um, so I have no hesitation including. I mean, I would include that film if I was doing a series of like neo noir films or something with great female protagonists. I would definitely include that film. So I mean, that's where I come down on it. Did you like that movie?
I have never seen it.
Never seen it. Well, there's
Yeah.
one that you have to put on your list,
Yeah.
on the watch list. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, that's when it seemed like Gus Van Sant was just going to be like the hottest filmmaker in the world.
Yeah.
He had a run there for a while, and then I don't know. I'm just not familiar with what he's done. Um, he got a little more serious, I think, right? He did the remake of Psycho, the needless remake of Psycho, and then he did. Didn't he do a movie about the kids who shot up their school in Colorado?
Yes, he
I think
did.
Gus
He
Van
did
Sant did that.
Columbine. Yeah.
Yeah, which I didn't see because it's very hard for me to watch those movies. I gotta say, uh, I get very little entertainment value out of those.
Yeah. I mean, you can watch if like we need to talk about Kevin if you want to kind of get into that sort of psychology. I've never
Which is a great film. Which is a great film. I really did. I got a lot out of that one because I don't know. It's the ones where they're following the kids, and it's like, oh my God, you're just kind of suffering through the whole movie, who's going to make it and who isn't, and all that kind of stuff. Uh, we need to talk about Kevin was a somewhat different thing, and uh, very interesting film, I thought.
Yeah, I've not seen the movie. I've read the book though, and the book was just, I mean, it's fantastic, but it was also extremely disturbing.
Yeah.
So when the movie came out, it was like, oh my God, I've already read this book. I'm not watching the movie too.
Well, it's
Yeah, I mean, not,
uh,
I'm sure it's great. It's just the book was super
well,
disturbing. It was like, once was enough.
yeah, I hear you. Okay. Um,
So
now
this is from,
we're picking up some time here.
yeah, we've picked up time. We're doing good. So Eileen, any chance of TCM airing Man in the Dark? 3D nor directed by Lou Landers and starring Edmund O'Brien, Audrey Totter, Ted DeCorsica. It's a remake of the 1936 Ralph Bellamy film, The Man Who Lived Twice.
Probably not. I have to say, I mean, I have shown Man in the Dark at the NOIR City Film Festivals because you can see it in 3D.
Mhm.
And I cannot tell you how much the 3D adds to the experience. I mean, all of the jokey things they do at the amusement park, playing bumper cars, and the you know all the gimmicky stuff you expect from 3D is in that film. And which is not so smart. I mean, I like a 3D movie that uses the 3D very creatively without being a gimmick, you know? Like Scorsese's great forgotten film Hugo is like the best 3D movie I ever saw because he just made a Martin Scorsese movie in 3D.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't going for gimmicky business because look, I'm shooting in 3D. It was just all of a sudden his usual incredibly dynamic directing style was in 3D, which is extraordinary, you know. Um, but Man in the Dark, it's like you need the 3D to get all the gimmicks. If you just showed it, if I showed it on TCM, it wouldn't be in 3D. It'd just be regular, and it'd be very flat. And and I don't think it's particularly good. It's certainly not Inferno, which is a great film in
Would you just
3D that works even if you don't see it in 3D. It's still a really good film. Um, you know, so that's kind of where I come down on those. And I think every studio did. I can't remember them all now, but they all did a crime film or a noir film in 3D, right? We showed I the Jury at Noir City Christmas last year. That was and again, if you watch that movie just regular flat 2 dimensions, it's not very good. You watch it in 3D, John Alton cinematography in 3D is like, oh my god, this is fantastic.
it's
And
the best shot 3D film I've ever seen. It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah,
Especially the title sequence, which I've talked about on the show before. So I won't go into it
yep, with the
again.
guy crawling towards the camera. And it's interesting because it's not a particularly well directed movie, but it is a beautifully photographed movie. And Alton, as he did routinely, he elevates the director significantly. Um, you know, just by virtue of his extraordinary compositions and his lighting, and you know how wonderful the camera work is. Um, but I don't think Man in the Dark is. I mean, even if it came up as a possibility to show it, I probably would not do it, just because I'd end up talking all about how it's not as good as if you see it in 3D, and that's kind of lame. So why would I do that, right? So Eileen, I hope you have a chance to see it. Um, you know, I always do like to bring these things back and have like a 3D day at Noir City if it's not too inappropriate with whatever the theme is. But you know, we've done that. I think I've shown Inferno
Uh-huh.
and Man in the Dark as a double bill at Noir City, so not out of the question. Okay, I guess this is our last one.
Uh-huh.
And this is from Jan. I guess it's Jan or Jane
Yeah, Nate.
In Stockholm, Sweden. Uh, he asks, or she, is Jane a man or a woman? Is Janne? Is that a
I
feminine version of
think it's
Jan?
I think it's a woman.
Okay, well,
Could be wrong, but because I think
you're
it would just
welcome
be
either
on.
way. You're welcome either way. Do you know that Rififi, which is how I say it, although I've heard it pronounced as Rififi and all these other, you know, things, but Rififi has been used in a word or expression in at least some European languages. I did know that. Swedish Refifikop, meaning heist robbery. Uh, I mean, I guess that's what the end there, the suffix means. It means a robbery where the perpetrators break through the roof, just like in the film, or through a wall or through the floor without making sound. How about that? Who knew that there was a specific term for that? The expression exists in German, Einbruch in Rififi Manier. I believe it also exists in the Czech language, maybe some other languages as well, but not in English as far as I know. Um, correct. What do you know about words and expressions in common language and in slang that come from the noir era? Too much. Uh, Fun fact, there has been a Swedish slang expression, spela Allen, which means play Alan or act like Alan, that refers to another actor from the noir era, Alan Ladd. The meaning is to act tough or a supercilious manner. Ah, interesting. Spela Allen.
Spare Alan.
Okay. Do you know any other words or expressions in English, slang or not, that stem from the noir era? Well, there's, oh my God, where would we even start? And can that be extended to say films from the 30s to the 60s or even 70s? Well, slang is something I just obsess over, and my two novels are like catalogs of American slang. I don't think there's a page that goes by where there isn't some expression that is totally an anachronism that probably people didn't know what the characters were saying because they were using the slang. But there's just all kinds of. I have over here many dictionaries of American slang. The Dictionary of American Underworld Lingo is a go-to book for me. If you find a copy online, buy it because it's just fantastic. It explains the etymology of all of these expressions where you're wondering, like, why do they say that? But Yanni, I'm telling you, there's so many, I barely know where to start. I did a thing for TCM when I first started doing Noir Alley. I did a thing where I would discuss the roots of slang terms like gunsel, and which has less to do with being a gunman than it has to do with being a kept boy, particularly in prison. That's why when Sam Spade says "give him the gunsel,"
Yeah.
he's not referring to him like a hoodlum. He's referring to him as like a punk. The
That's where the
literal
word punk
definition
comes from.
yeah.
But I think
And
she means like the kind of going the other way, where something was said in film noir or related to film noir that sort of turned into something like, like don't Bogart that joint. That's the only thing that came to my mind.
which was not, well, funny, not an expression of the time, but later in the 60s became, because of the way Bogart smoked his cigarettes,
Yeah.
The big draw, that became like, don't Bogart that joint, my friend. Pass it over to me. Yeah. Anyway, so showing our age now, and showing our age. But it's, again, I'm embarrassed to say my head is so full of this stuff that I don't even know where to like pick one. Um, you know, uh, and are the ones that are still in use.
Yeah.
That's what's kind of tough. I mean, but like, all the stuff for coffee, like Mud and Joe and Java and all that stuff, those were all commonly used, but they didn't come out of noir necessarily. It was an interesting thing because the noir writers, because they love to write about a lower strata of society, were drawn to street language. And that's where all of this lingo and slang came from. It came off the street, and very often in different ethnicities and things, Jewish slang, Yiddish slang, uh, and and then it got fed into the movies, and then it became repopularized because of the movies. Even after the thing had died out on its own and regular American usage, it was now a movie thing that you would expect to hear the characters say in a film. So, I mean, like all the nicknames for the detective, the
Yeah.
shamus and all that stuff. It's like I have no idea where the shamus came from. Um, all the different terminology for going to jail, the hooskow and all that kind of stuff. I don't know where all that came from. How about dead as a doornail? Who's dead as a doornail? Like, what's a doornail? And why is that the thing that you would say you're so dead as, you know? But everybody knew what that expression meant.
Yeah.
Anyway, we should do in another episode. I should make up a list because this one kind of took me off guard. So we should make up a list of like 10 or 15 of the favorite slang terms, from the noir era that have stood the test of time. That'd be kind of fun.
Not noir, but I think we should bring back bee's knees. I
The
love that.
bee's knees.
Isn't that
Yeah.
a great expression? Like, why aren't people still saying that? It's fun to
The
say.
bee's knees.
The bee's knees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good one. That's a
The
good
cat's
one.
pajamas.
The cat's pajamas. Yeah. And also the cat's meow. Oh,
Yeah.
she's the cat's meow. You know? Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Well, that's the thing. You say, who knows where all this stuff comes from? Well, these books I have actually they do trace the origins of these words, and it's pretty fascinating. I know if I wasn't lazy right now, we're almost done. I would go over there and pull my dictionary of underworld lingo off the shelf and just like pull out a sample because it is that's a special book. I actually have two copies. Just in case I lost one, I had to still I cherish it.
Good
All
job.
right,
Okay.
and I think you made it through without the curtains falling on you.
Yes,
Your
that was amazing.
your buddy Tyrion is just kind of I can still see him there. Oh yeah, look at that boy. He's a big boy.
He is
And I saw
huge.
it was either Charlotte or Emily was in the background for a lot of the episode.
Oh, wow. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, she was on the pillow over there in the corner, and I think she may still be there. I think I still see a little bit of her
Oh
ear
yeah,
sticking
that's
up.
that's Charlotte. She's been hanging out on the blanket. Hopefully she moves
Oh, okay.
before Ted gets here because Ted will not be happy to sit with
Oh,
his head
okay.
that close to her. That's Ted's spot on the couch, if
Uh-oh.
anyone cares.
I see. And what are you guys going to be watching tonight?
I am hoping to talk him into an Argentine horror film. Man, because the same director did a film a couple years ago, and it was like so brilliant. And Ted actually liked it. I watched it twice, and then so he's done well. Where I think it's Where Evil Lurks, and like every single like horror person I follow on YouTube is like, this is the best film of the year. So I'm hoping to talk Ted into it.
Okay, cool. I'm going to try to catch up on Monsieur Spade,
Yeah.
which I've only seen the first episode, and now I'm going to plow through tonight. We'll probably Kathleen and I will probably binge watch up to catch up on that one.
Oh, and I did go opening day at the 4 o'clock show. I went and saw it last week. The Promised Land, which is the new Danish film with Mess Mikkelsen. So I finally got to see that. I thought it was kind of funny because some people have been calling it like a Danish Western. It's like, it's not a Danish Western, it's a historical film. I would argue almost a
Okay.
historical romance. But I'm
Wow.
going to tell people it definitely is worth seeing in the theater because cinematography is gorgeous because it's out in Jutland, so it's the heath. Um, it was good. It wasn't like their first film together, a Royal Fair. I had also had kind of the same feeling for. Yeah, it's good, but I'm not really into historical films. Like I definitely wouldn't gone to see this if Mess wasn't in it. And Charlton Heston is the only other person who has got me to go watch historical films. And what was interesting though was his character in some ways is unsympathetic. Like there's times when you want to like beat him around the head. And it was so funny because I kept reading people say that about, or he was talking about that. And it was funny because Charlton Heston's wife, Lydia, always called those his hero heel roles. She always teased about it because Heston really liked doing those type of roles of these people that were just sort of like not completely the good guys. So yeah, so it's very anyway, it's good. Like I said, I think some people will like it more than me just because I'm just not big on. But oh my god, the young girl in that who's like a gypsy. Oh my god, incredible performance, and she's like young, like 7 or 8, and then the woman who is the lead is amazing. It's an incredible character. She has incredible character arc, and the actress is amazing. Like she was just incredible about it. Yeah. I thought the bad guy was overdone. Like I think the director had him play that role too hammy. He would have been scarier if he had been colder at the beginning, and then you see him increasingly more unhinged. He was just too. They mainly, you know what I mean? It wasn't even scary.
Well, now you got me. Now you got me rethinking my night's entertainment. I may have to find out where this is playing and go see that.
Definitely see it in a theater.
That sounds pretty good.
Yeah, it's a big
that's
screen
why I'm
film.
saying that.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
So yes, I think it's worth the price of admission.
We like movies that are worth the money you pay for them. That's important.
Yeah.
Okay, I guess we're winding up here, and I want to thank everybody for the questions, for watching this, for coming to the Noir City Festival in Oakland, which was a smashing success. And I hope I'm going to see a lot of folks in Seattle tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, because I will be there. And then we'll do this again very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Have fun in Seattle. Go to Dick's. You got to go to Dick's if you're in Seattle. Yeah. Oh God, I miss Dick's so much. Okay.
All right. Thanks again, Anne. Take care of your gaggle of cats. And I hope Ted isn't too upset that they're around.
He's fine with everyone but Charlotte.
Oh, okay. Well, or vice versa. Yes.
Okay,
very good. We will see you next time then.
Good night.
Okay, good night, everybody.